These are the scenes of the air defense system at work, filmed in Baghdad at night in 1991, just a few hours after the launch of Operation Desert Storm, the key phase of a Gulf War. Watching this footage, you might think that the pilots in the sky above were experiencing one of the most terrifying moments of their lives. But in reality, it was nothing like that. What you are seeing here is literally a fight with ghosts. Not a single aircraft was shot down during that night. Considering the enormous density of fire, that might seem impossible. Pilots later joked that it felt as if Iraqis had already deployed some kind of a new space weapon. And all of that, the entire spectacle, was an attempt to hunt down that guy, the F-117 Nighthawk. Developed by Lockheed Martin's legendary Skunk Works division, this aircraft became the world's first operational stealth bomber. It's hard to find someone who hasn't heard of it or of its younger brother, the B-2 Spirit. They are equally famous and equally mysterious. You can find countless videos on YouTube explaining to you how stealth aircraft work and the physics behind them. And all of these videos are I'm not saying that these videos are wrong. In fact, most of what they say is true, but there is one important point that is almost always left out. Usually the explanation in these videos goes something like this. A stealth means that it is invisible to radars. A radar emits radio waves. If they hit an object in the air, part of the energy bounces back towards the radar. From that reflection, the operator concludes something is flying out there. A stealth aircraft, they say, avoids this detection through two main tricks. A special shape that reflects radio waves away from the radar. A special coating that absorbs part of the radio wave energy. And this is correct, but the reality, as always, is a little bit more complex. There is a third factor that is actually of the first importance: diffraction. In this video, we'll break down what diffraction is, how Soviet physics helped Americans to create the first stealth bomber in history, and why the F-117 is so angular and the B-2 is so smooth. Diffraction is the ability of waves to bend and, more importantly, to spread around obstacles. A wave always spreads out when passing through an obstacle, but it becomes significant only when the size of the obstacle is of the order of the wavelength. In other words, a wave can reach areas that should technically be in shadow if it were traveling in a straight line. This bending is extremely complicated. After the interaction of the wave and the obstacle, the resultant wave will be dramatically different. Keep in mind that it is not a regular reflection from an obstacle. No, diffraction is purely a wave phenomenon and is different from anything you know. But here we'll keep it simple: bending and spreading around obstacles. That's enough. A simple example is the following. When you speak in one room of an apartment, you create sound waves, a wavelength comparable to the size of doorways. Your voice can be heard from another room because the sound waves bend and spread after passing through a doorway. In reality, a wave at the exit is not just a curved version of the original wave. It is something more complex, but again, we'll keep it simple: bending and spreading. In the case of radar, the obstacles could be things like wing edges, antennas, panel joints, and other details of an aircraft. To figure out exactly how waves bend around these edges, you need to solve the wave equation that is derived from the beautiful Maxwell's equations, the same ones that describe all electromagnetic phenomena from electrostatic to radio waves. But the problem is that even for simple shapes, these calculations are extremely hard. And for something as complex as an aircraft with countless edges, curves, and details, it's almost impossible, especially in the 60s and 70s when computers were thousands of times weaker than today. Until the late 60s, radar cross-section calculations were done after the aircraft had already been designed and tested in the wind tunnel. Design priorities were always focused on three main things: aerodynamics, to fly faster and higher than competitors; engines for maximum thrust and range, and weapons to strike targets effectively. Low observability was considered a second concern. If engineers responsible for radar signature found a problem, they could only make small cosmetic adjustments. This could reduce visibility only in certain frequency bands, but on real military radars, the aircraft still appeared as a bright target. Even the most advanced aircrafts of the era had an RCS of tens or even thousands of square meters, about the same as the bass flying at supersonic speed. Radar cross-section, or RCS, is the quantity that describes the ability of an object to reflect radio waves. RCS of 1 meter squared means that the target reflects radio waves as a metal sphere with cross-sectional area of 1 meter squared. For example, a Boeing 747 has an RCS of over 100 square meters. A 60s and 70s fighters typically had an RCS between 5 and 25 meters squared. The smaller the RCS, the harder it for the radar to detect the target. For the F-117, Lockheed engineers set themselves a goal that seemed almost fantastic at the time: to reduce RCS to less than 0.01 meters squared, turning the aircraft into an electronic sparrow in the sky. The turning point in the United States aircraft design came with Clarence Kelly Johnson, the legendary aircraft designer who is known in the industry as the man who is always 10 years ahead of his time. He deserves a separate video, but we are interested in the part of his career where he headed up the Skunk Works, a secret division of Lockheed Martin. Johnson was a man who combined bold decisions and strict discipline. He introduced the famous 14 rules of Skunk Works, including minimal bureaucracy, extremely small project teams, and direct personal responsibility of each engineer for his area. Under his leadership, Skunk Works created the U-2 spy plane, capable of flying over 21 kilometers high, and the SR-71 Blackbird, the fastest operational aircraft in history. By then, the USSR has rapidly expanded its air defense radar network, and the S-75 missile system was already shooting down high-altitude U-2s. Johnson realized that radar was improving so fast that the speed and altitude would no longer guarantee invisibility. He insisted that the RCS reduction had to be considered from the day one of the design process, on par with aerodynamics, engines, and weapons. What sounded revolutionary in the 60s became the gold standard of the United States in later global combat aircraft design. In 1971, Soviet physicist Pyotr Ufimtsev published a book, The Method of H Waves in Physical Theory of Diffraction. In this book, he created a mathematical model describing how electromagnetic waves scatter off various obstacles such as edges and corners. In the USSR, its value for aircraft design went unnoticed. But in the United States, the work was translated and landed in the hands of Lockheed engineers. Based on this theory, in the mid-70s, their engineer created the computer program Echo-1, capable of predicting diffraction effects from flat panels and edges during the design phase of an aircraft. In the 90s, Pyotr Ufimtsev moved to the United States and began working at the University of California. Later, he collaborated with Northrop Grumman, another major American defense company, where his groundbreaking diffraction theory was applied in the development of the B-2 Spirit bomber, one of the most expensive and complex aircrafts in history. In the late 70s, computers were still too weak to handle complex curves. Echo-1 could only model flat surfaces, so engineers literally built the F-117 out of facets. Each panel was angled to deflect radar waves away, with Ufimtsev diffraction theory guiding joints of these panels. Kelly Johnson had a saying, "If it looks ugly but works, then it's beautiful." The F-117 was exactly that. Secrecy during the production of the F-117 was absolute. Engineers worked in hangars without windows, and even within Lockheed, only a couple of people knew about the project. Today's stealth aircraft like the B-2 Spirit or F-35 Lightning are smooth and curvy because modern computing can accurately model the behavior of radio waves on complex shapes. But in the 70s, the F-117's sharp edges were the only path to true invisibility. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe for more, share your thoughts in the comments, and see you in the next story.